Wall Street sells off for the second day running as President Donald Trump sparks a trade war. The Dow and the S&P 500 slip over 1% each, while the Nasdaq recovers some ground from cuts of over 2%. The futures, however, trade higher as the U.S. Commerce Secretary indicates that there could be some compromise on tariffs. Asian markets are largely lower on global trade tensions. China has set a target of around 5% GDP growth for 2025 and lays out stimulus measures to boost its economy. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly lower start for our own markets today. Gold prices rise as the dollar weakens and trade war fears continue to grow. Crude prices have hit a 6-month low below $71 a barrel on reports of potential output hikes by the OPEC and U.S. tariffs on Canada and Mexico along with China. The National Stock Exchange, or the NSE, will shift the expiry for the weekly Nifty contracts to Monday from Thursday earlier, and that will be effective from the 4th of April. The change is also applicable to the Nifty monthly, quarterly and half-yearly contracts, and the Bank Nifty and Financial Nifty as well. And U.S. President Donald Trump will address a joint session of the U.S. Congress in just a few minutes from now. The president is likely to lay out plans for his second stint in office after an eventful start to his presidency. And all eyes are on that address from U.S. President Donald Trump, especially after the turn of events over the last 2 days. Good morning. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18 in the Mumbai News Center. I am Hormas Fatakia. But before we go across to the president, let's first take a look at how the Asian markets are faring this morning. Well, the Japanese markets have recovered some ground from the lows right now. The Hang Seng is trading with gains of around 2.5%. The Taiwanese index is trading in the green as well. The Kospi is now trading with gains of around 0.5%. So it was a weak start, but the indices have covered a lot of ground from the lows. And that is because of the U.S. Commerce Secretary's statement saying that there might be some compromise on tariffs with regards to Canada and Mexico, although there was no mention of China in that. But the Chinese markets, or the Asian markets for that matter, have recovered a lot of the lost ground from early trade. Pull up the GIFT Nifty as well, and we are coming on the back of a record 10-day losing streak on the Nifty. The implied open no better right now. Another 65-point downtick is what the GIFT Nifty is indicating as of now, but we'll see once the president or the Donald Trump's address, this is subject to change. But staying with Asia, the opening session of the National People's Congress has begun in Beijing. CNBC's Sri Jega Raja has more on this.
It's really fascinating because it's inescapable. You cannot ignore the tariff pressures that are being brought to bear on the global economy, and not least of all on China's. So there are two things that really stood out in terms of the highlights so far, and that is an increased commitment to spend more on science and technology, and there is almost a sense of trying to tariff-proof this economy, and a commitment to stockpile some essential commodities as well. Remember, China's countermeasures include are ostensibly directed on U.S. agricultural commodities and products. So that is a nod to food security, perhaps, from the China perspective. The other factor here is that China still remains deeply committed to defending 5% growth. That is the commitment, and that is the target that's been set for 2025 in terms of headline GDP. The objective reality is that the deflationary environment, and possibly a deeper deflationary environment as a result of the tariff pressure on the Chinese economy, now that the risks have metastasized, could put deflationary deeper and make it even more persistent. However, China is still defending 5%, but the objective reality is closer to 4.5% or 4.2% GDP in 2025. In the here and now, we are talking about, and the leadership here are talking about trying to get the consumer back and trying to really reinstill a sense of consumer confidence. They're doing that by spending and issuing bonds to support or incentivize the consumer to go out and upgrade equipment, to trade in old equipment for new equipment. And there's also an emphasis on social spending. So we expect to see more news and more details in terms of building out the social safety net. But in the here and now, this is really about increased bond issuance as well, sovereign bond issuance. 13 trillion is one estimate, 13 trillion RMB compared to 9 trillion prior to really fund and support all this spending that is needed to stabilise the broader economy and to stabilise the consumer. The big open-ended question here amongst economists is whether a bolder stimulus response is required, given the tariff pressure that has now become quite material and quite concerning now, not just for China, but for the global economy. Back to you now.
Some major announcements coming in there from China. But moving on to Wall Street then, where Tuesday's trading session was no different from Monday because the trade war fears were ignited. The Dow shed another 670 points, taking that two-day drop to 1,300 points now. The S&P 500 lost more than 1% as well. The Nasdaq was just down 0.3%, recovering some ground from the lows of the day. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were lower across the major indexes after new tariffs from the White House ignited a trade war with Canada, Mexico, and China. The Dow tumbling 670 points. The S&P 500 was down 72 points, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq was off by 65. 25% tariffs went into effect today on Canada and Mexico, while Chinese tariffs were increased by 10 percentage points. China and Canada both instituted tariffs in return. China's 15% tariffs, largely targeting U.S. agricultural imports, while Canada announced 25% tariffs on more than $20 billion worth of broad-based U.S. imports. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum denounced the new tariffs and said she would respond with tariffs and other measures on Sunday. Meantime, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau dropped a lawsuit against JPMorgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and payment app Zelle over alleged fraud that totaled almost $900 million. The CFPB first filed that suit in December during the Biden administration, alleging that Zelle and the banks did not properly investigate fraud claims or give reimbursements to victims of fraud. A Zelle spokesperson welcomed the dismissal, saying the lawsuit was, quote, legally and factually flawed. The agency has dropped at least 6 cases now that were brought by the previous administration. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
And let's also listen into what experts believe could be the impact of these tariffs imposed on Canada, Mexico, and China. Listen in.
Look, the challenge is once tariffs are in place, people and industries get used to it. And so they're very hard to ramp back after being put in place. The industries that get that protection like that protection. And so they don't want to see it reduced. You saw that the Trump administration imposed a lot of tariffs on China, and the Biden administration kept them on and added a few more. Even though there were efforts to review the tariffs to see which were really strategic and which we could afford to reduce, because the pressure was there to keep them on. And so I do fear that once you oppose tariffs, you're ratcheting up the costs of goods, and it's very hard to reduce them. And at a time when there are already a lot of inflationary pressures, including a lot of other policies like tax cuts that can add to inflation, tariffs is not very helpful. Things are going to become more expensive. There's going to be disruption. And the question is, what are we negotiating for? Leverage is great if it's actually used to negotiate a solution to problems.
Well, moving on then, markets in Europe closed the trading session lower as Donald Trump's tariff orders went into effect. The German DAX slipped over 800 points. The CAC was also down almost 2%. And the British FTSE also ending with losses of over 1%. The Stoxx 600, which is the regional index, also closed around 2% lower, marking its biggest single-day drop since August of last year. That's all we have on the global market action, but how will all of these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news this morning. First up, Vinny joins us to get all the market cues we need to watch out for. Vinny, good morning. Well, yesterday was not as bad as it was feared, but what's the setup looking like today?
Absolutely not as bad as it was feared. We did see that recovery coming in the market. So yes, that is what we kept an eye out on yesterday. Now, obviously, yesterday what we saw, Nifty closed about 22,000 levels, but was still in the red. It was the longest losing streak on record for the Nifty 50 that we've seen. 10 straight days of decline of the trading sessions for the Nifty 50 is what we saw. Mid and small cap, that saw much better recovery in terms in yesterday's trading session. Mid cap was up almost 1,000 points from the day's lowest point, so that was interesting to watch out for. Managed to close in the green as well. Mid cap was up 0.05%, while the small cap ended with gains of around 0.7%. Nifty Bank, that also saw good performance coming in, managed to close with gains of almost 0.3%, 130 points uptick. SBI, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, that was something that supported overall the Nifty Bank performance in terms of a move that we saw. FIIs continues to be sellers, so that is something we should keep an eye out on. FIIs coming back anytime soon is something that would be interesting for our markets. FIIs continue to sell for the 9th consecutive day. What we're watching out for, obviously, we do have the press conference that will be starting from Trump in terms of his first talk coming in. So that is important to watch out for. Trump tariff updates as well as US growth that becomes a concern in terms of stagflation is something key to watch out for. Domestic data points for the Indian market is something important. And the Nifty levels to watch out for is 21,800 is a key level that everyone's keeping an eye out on. Where the market is headed is key to watch out for. Muted start to a bit of a red start is what the Nifty implied open was indicating.
The muted start, 67 points lower is what the implied open currently is indicating. Vinny, thanks a lot for that. Over to Vamakshi now. List out the stocks you need to watch out for. Vamakshi, good morning. What's on your list?
Well, good morning, Hormas. Power Grid is the first one that we're watching out for. They've been declared as a successful bidder for 3 projects to establish interstate transmission systems on a build, own, operate and transfer basis. GE Vernova has bagged 3 orders worth 500 crores from Power Grid Corp. RVNL also has received a letter of acceptance for a project worth almost 730 crores from Himachal Pradesh State Electricity Board. ONGC's arm, ONGC Green, has acquired the entire stake in PTC Energy for 925 crores. Keep an eye out on Adani Wilmar as well, because they will be acquiring GD Foods, which is a leading player in sauces and pickles category and owner of the brand Tops. The price per share for the first tranche, that is 80% of shares, has been arrived at an enterprise value of nearly 603 crores. Walchand Nagar Industries is the next counter we'll be watching out for an acquisition here as well. They will be acquiring 60.3% stake in AI Intelligent Technology. Apollo Hospitals plans to commission comprehensive oncology sector at a cost of 250 crores. Grasim Industries has commenced commercial production of Birla Opus Paints plant at Mahad in Maharashtra. Biocon's arm has received US FDA's final approval for its ANDAs, lenalidomide capsules as well as dasatinib tablets. Its arm also has received tentative approval for its ANDA Riva Roxaban tablets. As far as Force Motors is concerned, Feb auto sales saw an uptick of 46.3%. And lastly, keep an eye out on JSW Energy. CCI has approved the acquisition of KSK Mahanadi Power Company by the company.
Interesting list of stocks there. Vamakshi, thanks a lot for that. Finally, Mangalam joins in with cues from the FNO space. Mangalam, good morning. Well, it's another start, a downtick that you're anticipating, but 22,000 seems to be a strong support right now.
Yes, it is another start on the red that is expected. But, most importantly, what happened yesterday was very interesting, where the NSE circular says that the expiry day has turned from Thursday to Monday. And come April 3rd, all the options and futures, Nifty Bank, etc., will expire on Monday as against Thursday. So that is something we'll most definitely keep an eye out on. As far as the key indices are concerned yesterday, mild red for the Nifty, 10th session in the red itself. The broader markets are doing well. We're in a bit of a bottom formation process for the market. We've been maintaining that over the last couple of trading sessions. The Nifty has seen reasonable bounces from the day's low, and the day's low were contained just around the 21,950 to 22,000 mark itself. And in the broader markets, there was gains coming in terms of, risk on. If you look at HAL, something like a Voltas or Varun Beverages, the ones which have been beaten down, saw some bit of an uptick. Voltas continues its up move as well. For 2 consecutive sessions, the net institutional flows have been positive from the cash market. So the DI has bought about 4,800 crores. The FIIs sold about 3,400 crores. In index futures, the FIIs bought Nifty Bank and sold Nifty. That was the interesting trigger the interesting trade that played out. And we have, the FI long exposure, which has increased from 15% to about 17% over the last 2 or 3 trading sessions. By and large, the range that the street is playing for is close to around 21,950 at the lower level to about 22,250 at the upper level. That's what the options at 22,000 put and 22,200 call suggest. But were we to break out of that 22,050 mark, we have seen some punt buying at 22,400 call as well. The one stock that I'm keeping an eye out on is Manappuram. It's entered F&O ban.
Indeed, Mangalam, thanks a lot for that. We'll keep an eye out on Manappuram, the usual suspect entering the F&O ban. You're just watching visuals on your screen just a few minutes ago with the arrival of Donald Trump. All eyes now on his State of the Union address, the joint session of the US Congress, where he'll be laying out plans for his second address. And just before his address, he's mentioned in a post that he'll be taking trillions of dollars in tariffs. Remember, this tariff war has resulted in a very, very sharp sell-off in the US markets. The Dow Jones was down almost 700 points yesterday, taking that 2-day fall to around about 1,300 points. The S&P 500 has already given up all the gains that it had seen post Donald Trump's election win. And it's not been unilateral, because the tariff imposition by the US has resulted in counter tariffs as well from almost every country that he has imposed tariffs on. Canada announced measures yesterday, as did China. Mexico has made an announcement that they will be announcing tariff measures on Sunday. But just before that, they will be having a conversation. President Claudia Sheinbaum will be in conversation with Donald Trump maybe around Thursday. And then they might take a call on what measures they will be implementing as counter tariffs on the US. There'll be tariff and non-tariff measures as well. But for now, all eyes on Donald Trump, as you can see on your screen, arriving for his address to the Congress, his first after being re-elected to the White House after a 4-year gap. Remember, after that sharp sell-off in the US that we have seen over the last 2 trading sessions, there is a bit of relief you can see on the futures side of things. The Dow futures are up around 200 to 250 points as we speak, and that is after the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in an interview to Fox Business yesterday mentioned that Donald Trump might be considering some relief for Canada and Mexico. Of course, he made this very clear that there will be no further pause on the tariffs that have been implemented, but he might be looking to achieve a middle ground with Canada as well as Mexico on the tariffs that have been implemented, and some goods that come under the NAFTA might see some exemptions. We take a short break, but we'll quickly return with Donald Trump's address. Stay tuned.